I watched from the window as my cousin Marcus parked my Audi in front of his new girlfriend's apartment building, acting like he owned it. He didn't know I could see him from the coffee shop across the street, preening in the rearview mirror before getting out and tossing the keys to the valet like some big shot. My car keys. For the car I never gave him permission to drive, let alone show off. This wasn't the first time my family had taken advantage of me. Growing up in Rochester with the Hendersons meant living in the shadow of success that wasn't yours. My father's brother, Uncle Richard, had built a small empire with his chain of car dealerships, and my cousins Marcus and Layla never let me forget that they were the ones with the money, the connections, the future. Meanwhile, my dad worked as a high school chemistry teacher, and my mom designed wedding invitations from our modest home office. We were comfortable, but nowhere near the level of wealth my uncle's family flaunted at every opportunity. I took a sip of my coffee and felt the familiar burn of resentment rise in my throat. 3 months ago, when I'd come home for what was supposed to be a short visit to help my parents through my dad's knee surgery, I'd never imagined I'd end up homeless and carless, watching my cousin joyride in my vehicle. But that's the thing about family. They know exactly where to place the knife. "Another refill, Devin?" the barista asked, already reaching for my cup. "Thanks, Annie," I said, sliding the mug across the counter. The Brick Corner Cafe had become my refuge these past few weeks. A place where I could use the Wi-Fi, nurse a coffee for hours, and try to figure out my next move. What Marcus and the rest of my family didn't know, what I'd kept carefully hidden for the past 6 years, was that I wasn't just Devin Henderson, the family underachiever who'd moved to Seattle after college for some vague tech job. My vague tech job had actually been a ground floor position at Quantum Visionary, a startup that developed revolutionary AI logistics software. I joined when the company was just 15 people working out of a converted warehouse. 4 years. Later, when Amazon acquired us for $2.3 billion, my equity shares had transformed me into someone worth $7.4 million overnight. But no one in my family knew this. Not my parents, not my uncle, and certainly not my entitled cousins. I'd kept it quiet, partly because I loved the simplicity of my life without the complications of known wealth, and partly because I knew exactly how my family would react, with their hands out. I scrolled through my emails on my laptop, glancing occasionally at the window to make sure Marcus hadn't dented my car. I had a message from Sylvia, my financial advisor, about some investment opportunities in a new biotech venture. Another from the real estate agent in Seattle about the waterfront property I'd been considering, and 3 missed calls from my sister, Rachel. Rachel was the only person in my family I truly trusted. 2 years younger than me, she'd escaped Rochester for Boston, where she was finishing her medical residency. Unlike the rest of them, she'd never made me feel less than. She'd defended me when others mocked my modest career choices, and she never asked for anything except the occasional pep talk during exam periods. I was about to call her back when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Devin, honey, when are you coming home? Marcus said he saw you downtown yesterday. We need to talk about the house situation." The house situation. That's what they were calling it now. As if my parents deciding to sell our family home, using my savings from the emergency account I'd set up for them as the down payment on their new condo, and then letting me know I couldn't stay with them anymore because there just isn't room, was some minor misunderstanding. I'd come home to help them through Dad's surgery, only to discover they'd emptied the $42,000 account I'd established for their medical emergencies. When I'd confronted them, they'd seemed genuinely confused by my anger. "But you're doing fine," my mother had said, patting my hand like I was an unreasonable child. "And we needed the money for the down payment. The condo has an elevator, which your father needs now. You understand, don't you? Family helps family." What she'd really meant was, Devin helps family. Family doesn't necessarily help Devin. The final blow had come when, during my second week staying in their guest room, my father had awkwardly explained that they'd promised the room to Aunt Patricia for her monthly visits. "She has her bridge club here," he'd said apologetically. "And you know how she is? Besides, can't you stay with friends? Or get a hotel? You're always on that laptop. Surely you make decent money." Not decent enough to warrant stealing my savings, apparently. I'd moved into a hotel, telling myself it was temporary. Then yesterday, I'd gone to retrieve my car from my parents' garage, only to discover it was gone. "Oh, Marcus borrowed it," my mother had said breezily. His is in the shop, and he has that big date tonight. You weren't using it anyway." I hadn't given Marcus permission to drive my car. I hadn't even given my parents permission to lend out my car. But in their minds, my belongings were community property, while theirs remained strictly off limits. That's how I'd ended up here, watching Marcus parade around in my Audi like he owned the world. I typed a response to my mother. "Busy today. We'll call tomorrow." Then I closed my laptop and gathered my things. I had a decision to make. For 6 years, I'd been living a double life. In Seattle, I owned a stunning apartment overlooking Puget Sound, invested in startups, and flew private. When I needed to travel for the foundation I'd established to support STEM education in underserved communities. In Rochester, I was just Devin, the son who'd moved away and presumably couldn't afford to help his parents beyond the occasional gift or emergency fund that they'd now depleted. I'd kept my world separate for reasons that had seemed important. At the time, I didn't want to be seen differently. I didn't want the constant requests for money that would inevitably follow. I didn't want the complications. But standing there, watching Marcus adjust my car's mirrors, I realized the complications had found me anyway. Maybe it was time to merge my two lives and deal with the fallout, whatever it might be. I walked out of the cafe and crossed the street, timing my arrival perfectly to intercept Marcus as he returned from valeting my car. "Nice ride," I said, leaning against a lamppost as he strutted toward the restaurant entrance. He froze, then recovered with a cocky smile. "Devin, didn't know you were around." "Yeah, just borrowing it while mine's getting some work done. Hope." "That's cool." "It's not," I said flatly. "I need my car back, Marcus. Now." His smile turned strained. "Come on, man, don't be like that. I've got Vanessa waiting inside. I'm trying to impress her. You know how it is." "I don't, actually. I don't take things that don't belong to me to impress people." He rolled his eyes. "It's just a car, Devin. It's not like you're even using it right now. Besides, after everything my dad's done for your family over the years, you could show a little gratitude." There it was, the family mythology. Uncle Richard, the magnanimous provider who occasionally tossed jobs to my father's former students or invited us to parties where we were clearly the poor relations. In their version of history, we were perpetually indebted to them. "Your dad hasn't done anything for my family that he hasn't lorded over us for decades," I said, my voice low but intense. "And that car is mine. I paid for it. I need it back." "Now?" Marcus's face hardened. "You know what your problem is, Devin? You've always been jealous. Always had a chip on your shoulder because my dad made something of himself while yours stayed a nobody teacher. Well, guess what? Life isn't fair. Some of us are just more successful than others." I felt a strange calm settle over me. For years, I'd sat quietly through these jabs, these reminders of the family hierarchy. I'd nodded and smiled and kept my secrets close. But standing there on that sidewalk, with my cousin wearing a watch worth less than what I tipped my housekeeper at. Christmas, something broke loose inside me. "You're right, Marcus," I said, my voice steady. "Life isn't fair, but sometimes it's more unfair than you realize." I pulled out my phone and opened an app. With a few taps, I canceled the valet service for my car and requested it be brought. "Around immediately. What are you doing?" Marcus asked, suddenly nervous. "Getting my car back and setting a few things straight." The valet appeared with my Audi less than a minute later. I handed him a $50 bill and took the keys. "You can't just," Marcus began, but I cut him off. "I can and I am." "Enjoy your dinner, Marcus." "I'm sure Vanessa will be very impressed with the real you." I got into my car and drove away, leaving him sputtering on the sidewalk. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. A turning point. Back at my hotel, I called Rachel. She answered on the second ring, her voice tired but warm. "Devin, finally. I've been trying to reach you all day. Have you talked to Mom and Dad?" "Not really," I said, kicking off my shoes and sitting on the edge of the bed. "I'm still processing. The fact that they emptied my emergency fund for their down payment, then effectively kicked me out." Rachel sighed. "I know. It's messed up. I tried to talk to them about it, but they're so caught up in their own narrative that they can't see how wrong it was. And now Marcus borrowed my car without permission. I just had to track him down and take it back." "God, he's such a tool," Rachel said, and I could picture her rolling her eyes. "Have you thought about what you're going to do?" Are you going back to Seattle soon? I hesitated. Rachel and I were close, but I'd never told her about my wealth either. It had always seemed easier to keep that part of my life separate. But now, with everything unraveling, I wondered if I'd been protecting the wrong people with my silence. Rach, there's something I need to tell you, I said slowly. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Over the next hour, I explained everything. The startup, the acquisition, my current net worth, the foundation, all of it. Rachel was silent for so long after I finished that I thought we'd lost the connection. Rachel, you still there? I'm here, she said finally, her voice small. I'm just processing. Devin, you're telling me you've been a millionaire for 6 years and never said anything? Not even to me? I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. At first, it was because I was figuring things out myself. Then it was because I didn't want anything to change between us. And honestly, I was afraid of what would happen if Mom and Dad and the rest of the family found out. Like they'd treat you the way they treat Uncle Richard? No, like they'd treat me like an ATM, which, to be fair, they already do with the limited resources they think I have. Rachel was quiet again, thinking. I get why you kept it secret, she said finally. But I wish you'd trusted me. I do trust you. You're the only one I trust. That's why I'm telling you now. So what's your plan? Are you going to tell everyone? Looked out the hotel window at the Rochester skyline, so familiar yet so different from my life in Seattle. I think it's time for the truth. All of it. But I want to do it my way. Which is? I'm not sure yet, but I'll know it when I see it. After talking with Rachel for another half hour, we said goodbye with a promise to video chat the next day. I felt lighter having shared my secret with her, but also anxious about what came next. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my parents, about Marcus and Uncle Richard, about the family dynamics that had shaped me even as I'd tried to escape them. By morning, I had a plan. I called Sylvia first thing. I need the jet, I told her without preamble. Good morning to you too, Devin, she replied, amused. When and where? Tomorrow, from Seattle to Rochester. But I needed to look impressive. More impressive than a $7 million Gulfstream G500. What exactly are you planning? A family reunion of sorts, I said, and I need to make an entrance. Next, I called Uncle Richard's executive assistant, a formidable woman named Janet who'd been with him for 20 years and knew all the family secrets. Devin Henderson, I said when she answered. I need a favor. Well, she replied, her voice warming slightly. She'd always had a soft spot for me, perhaps because I was one of the few family members who treated her like a person rather than furniture. What can I do for you? Uncle Richard's birthday party this weekend. I need to be added to the guest list. There was a pause. Your name is already on the list, Devin. Your parents RSVP'd for the whole family last month? I smiled grimly. Of course, they had. Perfect. And one more thing, I'll need access to the helipad at the country club. Another longer pause. The helipad. May I ask why? I'll be arriving by private jet, and I'd prefer not to drive from the airport. I could almost hear her mental calculations, her reassessment of who exactly she was speaking with. I see. I'll make the arrangements. Will you be needing anything else? Yes, I said. Complete discretion until I arrive. After hanging up, I booked a flight back to Seattle for that afternoon. I had preparations to make if I was going to reveal my true self to my family, and I wanted to do it right. 2 days later, I was in my jet flying back to Rochester. I'd spent my time in Seattle gathering what I needed, documents, photos, evidence of the life I'd been living parallel to the one my family thought they knew. I'd also collected the keys to my various properties, including the lake house in the Finger Lakes region that I'd purchased 2 years ago. Ironically, just 20 minutes from the country club where Uncle Richard's party would be held. As the jet began its descent, I looked out the window at the familiar landscape below. I'd grown up here, formed by this place and these people in ways both good and bad. For years, I'd kept my success hidden, afraid of how it would change things. But now I realized that by hiding who I'd become, I was still giving my family power over me, the power to make me feel small, less than, unworthy. It was time to reclaim that power. The pilot's voice came through the speaker. "Mr. Henderson, we'll be landing in 5 minutes. The helicopter is standing by to take you to the country club." "Thank you, James," I replied, straightening my tie and checking my reflection in my phone. I'd opted for a tailored Tom Ford suit, subtle but unmistakably expensive. No flashy jewelry, no obvious signs of wealth beyond the quality that speaks for itself. 30 minutes later, the helicopter touched down on the country club's helipad. Through the window, I could see staff members rushing out, lined up to greet whoever they assumed was important enough to arrive this way. Behind them, on the terrace of the clubhouse, guests in cocktail attire turned to watch, champagne glasses in hand. I took a deep breath and stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight. "Team Samili Mendiyandijitir." Club's manager hurried forward, hand extended. "Welcome to Lakeview Country Club, sir. We're honored to have you join us today." "Thank you," I said, shaking his hand. "Devin Henderson. I believe my uncle is expecting me." His eyes widened slightly at my name, the mental gears turning as he tried to connect the Devin Henderson he knew of, the unassuming nephew of Richard Henderson, with the man who just arrived by private helicopter. "Of course, Mr. Henderson. Right this way. The party is on the main terrace." As we walked through the manicured gardens toward the clubhouse, I spotted Rachel near the entrance. I'd told her I was coming, but not how I was arriving. Her jaw dropped as she recognized me, then broke into a wide grin. She rushed forward and threw her arms around me. "You absolute drama queen," she whispered in my ear. "A helicopter? Seriously." I laughed, hugging her back. "Go big or go home, right?" "Everyone's here," she said, pulling back to look at me. "Mom and Dad, Uncle Richard and Aunt Vivian, Marcus and Layla. They're all out on the terrace." "Perfect. Ready for the show?" Mines linked her arm through mine. "Lead the way, Mr. Millionaire." We stepped onto the terrace together, and for a moment, no one noticed us. The party was in full swing, with about 50 guests mingling around high tables and a bar set up in the corner. Uncle Richard held court near the railing, surrounded by his usual entourage of business associates and country club friends. Then, one by one, heads began to turn. Conversations faltered. My mother, standing near the bar with my father, froze with her champagne glass halfway to her lips. Uncle Richard noticed the shift in the room and looked up. His eyes found me, then moved to the helicopter still visible, on the helipad behind us. A series of expressions crossed his face. Confusion, disbelief, calculation. He recovered first, crossing the terrace with his arms outstretched. "Devin! What a surprise! We didn't expect you to make such an entrance." "Happy birthday, Uncle Richard," I said, accepting his embrace but not returning it with any warmth. I thought it was time I joined the family celebration properly. My parents approached next, my mother's eyes darting between me and the helicopter. "Devin," she said, her voice uncertain. "What's going on? Whose helicopter is that?" "Mine," I said simply. "Well, technically it belongs to the charter company, but the jet it connects to is mine." A silence fell over our little group. In my peripheral vision, I could see other guests watching with undisguised curiosity. "Jet?" my father echoed weakly. "Yes, a Gulfstream G500. I flew in from Seattle this morning." Marcus pushed his way forward, his face flushed with what might have been embarrassment or anger. "What is this, Devin? Some kind of joke?" I turned to him, calm and collected. "No joke, Marcus. Just the truth. Something this family isn't particularly familiar with." "Devin," my mother hissed, glancing nervously at the other guests. "This isn't the place for—" "Actually, I think it's the perfect place," I interrupted. "Uncle Richard's birthday. The whole family gathered, everyone dressed in their finest, pretending to be exactly who they want the world to see." Uncle Richard's expression hardened. "Perhaps we should take this inside." "I'm comfortable right here," I said, gesturing to a nearby table. "Shall we sit? I have something I'd like to show all of you." Rachel squeezed my arm in silent support as we moved to the table. My parents followed reluctantly, and Uncle Richard, after a moment's hesitation, joined us with Aunt Vivian. Marcus and Layla hovered nearby, clearly unwilling to miss whatever was about to happen. Once seated, I removed a slim portfolio from my jacket and placed it on the table. 6 years ago, I began, I was part of a startup called Quantum Visionary. We developed AI logistics software that revolutionized supply chain management. 4 years ago, Amazon acquired us for $2.3 billion. I opened the portfolio and slid out a news article about the acquisition, with my name clearly listed among the founding team members. My mother gasped softly. My share of that acquisition was $7.4 million, I continued, my voice steady. Since then, with careful investment, that amount has grown. I own properties in Seattle, Aspen, and... I smiled slightly. Right here in the Finger Lakes. About 20 minutes from where we're sitting, actually. I laid out more documents. Property deeds, investment statements, photos of my Seattle apartment, and the foundation's work. The Devin Henderson Foundation for STEM Education has provided scholarships to over 300 students from underprivileged backgrounds. We've funded computer labs in 50 schools across the country. We're currently expanding into robotics programs for middle schools. My father stared at the documents, his face pale. Why didn't you tell us? I met his gaze directly. Because I knew exactly what would happen. The same thing that's been happening my entire life, just on a larger scale. You would take and call it love. You would expect access to everything I had, while giving nothing in return but criticism and comparisons. That's not true, my mother protested, but there was no conviction in her voice. Isn't it? You took $42,000 from an account I set up for emergencies. You kicked me out of your house when I came to help you. You gave my car to Marcus without my permission. Uncle Richard cleared his throat. Now, Devin, family helps family. You can't blame them for... Family helps family, I repeated. That's the mantra, isn't it? But in this family, help only flows one way. From me to all of you. I turned to look at Marcus. When was the last time you helped anyone but yourself, Marcus? When have you ever considered someone else's needs above your own wants? He flushed, anger replacing embarrassment. You think you're so much better than us now because you got lucky with some tech company? No, I said quietly. I think I'm better than you because I don't steal from people who trust me. I don't mock others to make myself feel important. I don't measure a person's worth by the size of their bank account. I gathered the documents back into the portfolio and stood. I didn't come here to gloat or to humiliate any of you, though God knows you've done both to me over the years. I came because I'm done living a double life. I'm done pretending to be less than I am to protect relationships that were never equal to begin with. My mother reached for my hand, her eyes suddenly calculating in a way that turned my stomach. Devin, honey, we're your family. We love you. If we've made mistakes, we can work through them together. I gently withdrew my hand from hers. That's just it, Mom. You don't love me. You love what I can do for you. There's a difference. I looked around at their faces, shocked, embarrassed, some calculating what this revelation might mean for them. Only Rachel's expression showed genuine understanding and support. I'll be staying at my lake house for the next week, I said. Rachel has the address. If any of you would like to have a real conversation, one based on mutual respect rather than what you think you can get from me, you're welcome to visit. I turned to Uncle Richard. Happy birthday. The helicopter will return for me in 3 hours. Please enjoy your party. With that, I walked away from the table, Rachel falling into step beside me. Behind us, I could hear the explosive babble of voices as my family erupted into argument and recrimination. That was both the most horrifying and most satisfying thing I've ever witnessed, Rachel murmured as we made our way to the bar. I feel like I've been holding my breath for 6 years, I admitted, like I can finally exhale. You know they're going to come crawling to that lake house, right? All of them, with their hands out and their excuses ready. I nodded, accepting a glass of champagne from the bartender. I'm counting on it, but this time they'll be coming to me on my terms. No more secrets, no more pretending to be someone. I'm not. Rachel clinked her glass against mine. To the real Devin Henderson. It's about time we met him. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. To the truth, however uncomfortable it might be. As predicted, they all came to the lake house. My parents first, then Uncle Richard and Aunt Vivian, and finally, Marcus and Layla. Each visit followed a similar pattern. Initial awkwardness, then profuse apologies that rang hollow, followed by increasingly unsubtle inquiries about my finances and whether I might be interested in helping out the family. To my parents, I offered a clean slate but with clear boundaries. I would replenish the emergency fund, but it would be managed by my financial advisor with withdrawals requiring documentation. I would visit for holidays and special occasions, but I would stay in a hotel, not their guest room. I would be their son, but not their bank. To Uncle Richard, who suggested a partnership in his dealerships, I politely declined, explaining that my investments were focused on technology and education, not retail. The look of genuine shock on his face when I turned down what he clearly considered a magnanimous offer was almost comical. Marcus and Layla received the coldest reception. Their half-hearted apologies, clearly coached by their parents, didn't mask their resentment at the shifting power dynamics. When Marcus suggested I might loan him enough to start his own business, I didn't even dignify it with a response. On my last day at the lake house, Rachel came to visit alone. We sat on the dock, feet dangling in the cool water, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "So what happens now?" she asked, leaning back on her hands. I shrugged. "I go back to Seattle, continue my work, live my life authentically for once." "And the family? They adjust or they don't. That's up to them." She nodded, understanding. "For what it's worth, I think what you did took incredible courage. Not just the big reveal, but standing firm afterward. Not letting them manipulate you back into the old patterns. It's easier when you have 7 million reasons to be confident," I joked. But we both knew it wasn't about the money. It was about self-worth, about refusing to accept the narrative others had written for me. "When do you finish your residency?" I asked, changing the subject. 8 months, she replied. "Why?" I was thinking, the foundation is looking to expand its medical education initiatives. We could use someone who understands both medicine and education. Someone trustworthy. She turned to look at me, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Are you offering me a job, Mr. Big Shot?" "I'm offering you an opportunity," I corrected. "One based on your skills and character, not your last name or your willingness to flatter me." Rachel bumped her shoulder against mine. "I'll think about it, but only if it comes with access to the jet once in a while." I laughed, feeling the last of the tension drain from my body. "Deal." As night fell over the lake, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. For years, I'd hidden my success, afraid of how it would change my relationships. In doing so, I'd allowed others to define who I was and what I deserved. I'd accepted less than I was worth because I feared losing. Connections that, in truth, had never been healthy to begin with. The wealth hadn't changed me. But standing up for myself, refusing to be the family ATM any longer, that had changed everything. Some relationships would weather this transformation, like my bond with Rachel. Others would wither away, revealed as the transactional arrangements they'd always been, and I was at peace with that. The next morning, as my helicopter lifted off from the lake house's private pad, I looked down at the sprawling property below. I'd chosen to purchase it 2 years ago, not because I needed another home, but because some part of me had always wanted to return to these roots on my own terms. Now I had. Not as Devin the family disappointment, the one who needed to be tolerated, and occasionally helped, but as Devin Henderson, successful entrepreneur, philanthropist, and a person worthy of basic respect. They had sold my car and taken my savings, small betrayals that revealed greater truths about how they viewed me. So I had flown in on my $7 million jet and shown them who I really was. Not to seek revenge, but to reclaim my narrative and set the boundaries I should have established long ago. As Rochester grew smaller beneath me, I didn't feel sadness or regret, only a profound sense of liberation. Sometimes the heaviest chains are the ones we forget we're wearing, and sometimes the greatest wealth isn't what's in your bank account, but what you feel when you finally, unapologetically, become yourself.